I think these are two of the most difficult pieces of Scripture to understand. And I hope they shocked you so much that you just woke up right there, just with bated breath, hardly waiting to hear what's going to happen next. I'm not sure that happened, but anyway. Jesus seems to be insulting this woman that asked him for help with her daughter. Almost refers to her as a dog. And yet something happened there to turn the whole situation around on a dime right there, where she shamed him or did something that I think was very, very clever. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. And then we have the reading from the epistle or the letter of James. James, the disciple, James, the brother of Jesus, we're not sure exactly who wrote that. But on the other hand, we know that one thing, that Luther did not like that scripture, and in fact called the book of James the epistle of straw. And Luther, of course, was so much on faith and kind of downplaying works. At least that's one interpretation of him, that idea of faith without works did not settle with him very well. So let's see if we can kind of tie it all together and talk about what that might mean, because on the one hand, we have the idea that faith and works, somehow we have to balance that. On the other hand, we see of something very unusual happening in the life of Christ. And this is only second or third time that Jesus really puts people down. Or it seems like way, anyway. Well, let's pretend that we are going to a movie. And the movie is just so thrilling that we're sitting there watching this. And we're getting such a kick out of it and really enjoying it. And then something happens in the theater. And we are all of a sudden pulled out of that movie temporarily to observe what is happening. Or perhaps we just do it of our own volition, just to see how that is, to pull ourselves away from the movie and listen to the dude down on the next row rustling through his popcorn, or somebody sipping on one of those giant-sized colas, or some child screaming or whatever. And we realize how really difficult it is to pull ourselves out of that whole involvement with the movie into the real world in the movie theater. It's difficult for us to do. And as Christians, we generally have one foot in the here and now, one foot in the spiritual world. And we try our best to balance those without falling on our can in the presence. But we do that. The thing is, there is often in our lives something that brings us to a crisis point. It may be loss of someone or something, or some ability that we had that we no longer have. It can be the change in our job, the change in our family, someone moving away. And we realize that from this point on, life will never be exactly the same, because we have lost something or something has changed. So what we do, we go inside of ourselves. Sometimes we will go to others. But what we'll do is attempt to discern for ourselves, what are those things that we can count on? What are those ideas, are those faith-based precepts that we have that we can say, this is what I stand for, this is what I know to be true in spite of the tragedy that has happened, in spite of what I've lost. I know this about life and about my faith. Well, sometimes those are ideas based on experience. Sometimes they're ideas that we have been taught and rehearsed over and over in our lives. Sometimes, frankly, they're things that we make up as we go to survive along the way. But the idea is that all of us in some way have some sort of spiritual path that we are on, and that spiritual path is based on some truths that we hold about life, or about the universe, or about God or Christ, or something that we base our existence upon. Let me give you a couple examples. I believe with all my heart that we are all very much connected, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I know that. And I know that no matter what happens, that our lives are entwined to a great extent, and even into the spiritual world in the past and now and in the future, we're going to be involved with each other. Whether we like each other or not, really, we are going to be involved with each other. I also know that basically in life we reap what we sow. Although that doesn't mean that everything is exactly fair. Because it seems like sometimes you can do everything right and things just turn out to be less than perfect. I remember going to a convention. It wasn't actually a convention, it was a program for those people that have a little spot of land that want to start raising grapes. So they had 5 experts come in and were telling all of us how to start a vineyard and that kind of thing. But most of the people said something like this: you know, the truth is, no matter how good your ground is, no matter how great the weather is, no matter how good of vines you start out with, or what kind of fertilizer you use, there'll be some times when the weather, the vines, the ground, all of it's perfect, and the grapes don't grow. And the idea is that I want you all to know that no matter if you're going to be growing grapes, you can give it all you got, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Well, life is kind of like that, and we often do everything that we think is the best. We bring the best we have to offer. We do things right by the book or correctly, and yet some things fail to work out. I've also learned that when things seem to not be working out, my strategy is to try harder and do more of what I know to do. That's not always the way to solve problems, but it's one thing I've learned, and that is I've learned in my own mind, when I think I am doing more than my share, actually I'm doing about my share. I'm doing about what I should be doing, at least. But when I do more than my share, then I know I've got it about right. Those are just some ideas of the spiritual path that I base my trials and tribulations upon. But there are some other things that I know that are really, really interesting as well. I'm going to jump to another track now and talk about monkeys. Monkeys, yeah.